As a preliminary matter, this is a public meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I am Howard Tracer, the chairman. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Zoning Board members, Eric Spahn.
Here.
And Mario Carnavelli.
Here.
And Larry Murphy from the Planning Board.
Present.
Okay, and staff, Susan Noyce.
Here.
And anticipated speakers, Brian Winter, Town Council.
Brian Winter from Town Council's office is present.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Today is Thursday, November 19th, 2020. It is 7:30 p.m. and this is an open meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the zoning board is convening by telephone conference, video conference via Zoom, as posted on the agenda of the Zoning Board of Appeals section of the town website identifying how the public may join. You may participate by going to http://zoom.us and entering meeting ID 881-1911-9501. Passcode 552901 or calling 929-205-6099, entering meeting ID 881-1911-9501, and if prompted, enter the passcode 552901. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference. Application information has been provided to the zoning board members and materials will be presented during the meeting. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Howard Tracer, Chairman, will introduce each item on the agenda. As a participant, we ask you to keep the following in mind. Please mute when you are not speaking. For a telephone, *6 to toggle, mute, unmute, or computer, click on off mute button. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that as video participants, you are the attendees in the meeting. Participants can see you and care should be taken to eliminate interruptions while you are participating on your computer. Anything that you broadcast on your video will be captured by the recording. I will yield the floor to the applicant and/or their representatives and will invite them to present their application for further information that was requested. If the applicant and/or their representative wish to share their screen, please request through the chairman so that you can be given permission to do so. The chairman will afford ZBA members the opportunity to speak and ask questions at any time. The chairman will afford participants the opportunity to speak and ask questions as follows. I will seek questions through the raised hand function. For video conference participants, this function can be accessed by clicking on the participants option listed in the menu below the photo gallery. Hover your cursor in this area if you don't see it. Window will open and display on the right. On the bottom of this participant area, you will see the list of phone video participants, and on the bottom you will see the ability to click on a button to raise hand. Please ensure your name is displayed you may rename by using more functions next to your name. Not sure what that means, but list your name, address, and then your question. Telephone participants can use their phone's keypad while in a Zoom meeting to raise hand by hitting *9. I will seek to call upon questions from the public that have hit the raised hand button in the order in which they are listed. Please identify your name and address and then your question or comment. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. We will continue down the list of those in the raised hand column. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal or questions or concerns that were received, they will be read for the record at this time. Additional agenda items will be called upon and handled in the same manner. Okay, we can move on to the first hearing, Eric.
Public hearings. Ron Boland, 354th Street, continued hearing. The applicant is requesting a finding for relief from section 97-4D of the Newbury zoning bylaws, as the proposed construction will increase the height, floor area ratio, the FAR, and lot coverage of the structure located within the Plum Island Overlay District, PIOD, for the property located on Assessor's Map U04-0-61.
Okay, thank you. The applicant has requested a continuance until the December meeting date. Evidently, he's still working on his plans. We entertain a motion to continue to some date in December that Sue will tell us. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
continue the hearing.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Eric?
And that would be the 17th of
15th.
December, if that meets everybody's schedule.
Yeah. That's
Yep.
fine for me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're getting out of order here. Eric, I need you to vote.
Yes.
Okay. Mario?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote in favor also. Motion passes. Yeah.
Okay, public hearings. Jennifer Ford, Seacoast Canine, 35 Downfall Road, continued hearing. The applicant is requesting an administrative appeal for relief from section 97-10 of the Newbury zoning bylaws for a customary home occupation, CMO, for the property located at 35 Downfall Road, Byfield, Newbury, Mass. 01922, Assessors Map R41-0-60.
Okay, hello, is the applicant or the representative with us?
They are.
yes.
I'm going.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Noyes, thank you.
Okay, if you'd like to give us any new information that you have since our previous meeting, and I'll allow you a quick summary of what went on last month.
Sure.
We're really looking for new information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll fold those two things in together. Just by way of quick summary, I submitted a letter to the board on September 8th, 2020, that we believe laid out the factors for qualification for a customary home occupation designation, the 5 different criteria that are set forth in the bylaw under section 97-10 C1. The one of those 5 criteria that would, I think all would probably agree is most in play and under discussion is incidental and secondary use of the residents at 35 Downfall Road, where Jennifer Ford resides. So we're happy to answer any further questions that the board may have with regard to exactly what the scope and scale of the proposed reduced operation would be there. I would just also, by way of summary, say that as the board is aware, customary home occupation use is an as of right use in every zoning district within the town, except for not surprisingly, the commercial highway A district. And so from a legal, pure legal point of view, if the 5 criteria of a customary home occupation use are met in the board's judgment, then it's as of right. I know at some point in the past, there had been some discussion about whether those types of uses that would otherwise require a special permit, if they were, not home occupation uses, are ineligible for this designation. And there's just simply nothing in the bylaws or state law that would support that additional restriction over the 5 criteria. And when you think about it, it wouldn't make sense if that were the case, because in the agricultural residential zoning district where 35 Downfall Road is, of course, any commercial use of any kind requires a special permit unless it fits within the customary home occupation. So if it were the case that if something needed a special permit, as dog daycare does for businesses that are large enough to warrant that, then nothing could qualify for a customary home occupation, because the only types of uses that are as of right within the zoning district are essentially residential or agricultural uses. So it's a straightforward analysis from our perspective. If the proposal meets the 5 criteria, we respectfully believe that you should, grant it that designation. And we feel very strongly that we've demonstrated that it does meet all 5 criteria, but again, are happy to go over any of the particular criteria. As far as new information, Mr. Chairman, I know one of the subject matters that came up before, and it sort of is related to that secondary versus residential use question, is what is a customary home occupation? And I'd spent some time, and Attorney Winter may, have some input here when the time comes. But I took a look at case law to see, is there a hard and fast definition for what is considered quote unquote customary? And there really isn't. It's something that's very much within the discretion of a board such as yours in determining what within this particular town would be considered customary. Now, the counter point to customary is something that's unique, a type of business that really doesn't exist with any type of regularity within the town. And so if a business, is something that isn't unique, is something that is relatively common for businesses that people engage in within the town of Newbury, then it would be well within the board's discretion to deem it customary. Now, we believe that there's really no reasonable question that dog daycare is customary. And the best evidence of that we have is actually Jennifer Ford's business itself, which for 2 to 3 years prior to her moving to 35 Downfall Road, operated under that exact type of designation at 109 Main Street, down the street in Byfield. So she was one of several types of dog care businesses that have operated just within the past few years as a customary home occupation. So the question sort of answers itself in terms of, is it customary? Well, it was with respect to the specific owner and the specific business at a property down the street. And as I pointed out last time, we did pull some business certificates from Town Hall recently and found that there are at least 2 other animal care businesses just within Byfield that operate under customary home occupations and not under special permits. There are other businesses, including a large business on Route 1 in Newbury, that has both the business certification and a special permit, as Ms. Ford did when her operation was larger earlier. But Lisa's Pet Service on Moulton Street and Fish to Fur Pet Care on Grove Street are 2 Byfield businesses that have home occupation certifications lasting through, by my records, 2023. So we believe that this type of business is very clearly something that should be considered customary, and certainly is within the board's discretion to deem it so. That was really all I had for my presentation, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. But we did want to, leave as much time as the board would like for Ms. Ford in particular to answer any questions specifically on, again, the proposed scope and scale of what we are proposing to be a quite scaled back operation from in the past, including the limit of 2 non-resident employees that would be going to the location Monday through Friday during that midday period of time. So thank you very much, and either of us are happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Eric, do you have any questions for the applicant? Or comment?
No questions at this time. I guess I do have one question in terms of the statement that you were operating under a customary home occupation when previously, for starting the business, you did seek approval from the planning board?
No, not when Jennifer was at 109 Main Street.
Yep.
No, that you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, but no, there was no planning board special permit process at 109. She simply she had a business certificate and a designation as a home occupation business during the time that she was at 109 Main Street.
So there was no previous application made to the planning board at all?
I don't believe so for 109 Main Street, was there, Jenny?
No, we started as a home occupied business.
Right. It wasn't until she, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so then when she moved the business, then it was brought up that an application was brought before the planning
That's
board.
right. That's right. Yeah. So she moved to 35 Downfall Road, got a special permit to have the business that she was running that had the, I believe, the 40 dog limit with more employees, et cetera. And now that she has, for the last year, has had this commercial space in Salisbury that she leases, a significant portion of the activity has migrated over to that, which is why she's seeking this designation for 35 Downfall Road for a smaller number of dogs and the 2 non-resident employees.
Thank you.
Okay, Mario?
Just-
Anything?
One question regarding the space, percent of space for the kennel versus a residential space?
Jenny, you want to take that?
So you mean here at 35 Downfall?
Yeah. Is it 10%,
So-
15, 20, 30?
Of the total space, it's 18 acres. None of the indoor residential space is used for the business. So I would say
It's all outside.
yes, and we have a barn.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's much smaller than obviously the house and the paddocks for the other animals.
Okay, that's good.
Just as by way of reminder, Jenny also, as she alluded to, she has alpaca, goats, and some other farm animals there that are, completely separate and apart from the dog training.
My question is just probably a review of what part of what was discussed the last time. And I'm guessing Jenny will be able to answer this, but either one of you. You said you've downsized the business. So obviously that means less dogs. How many, and you, to 2 employees, if I'm correct. But how is that going to affect what I would consider the main complaint of the neighbors, as far as trips on the road? How much of a difference is it going to make?
We'd be going from 4 non-resident employees to 2.
Right,
So,
okay.
And they take a trip in the morning and a trip out, obviously, in the afternoon. And they're allowed a lunch break. So I'd say I would estimate 50%.
And is that how you're operating now?
Depends on the weather right now. We have a lot of outdoor space here. And so I would say we never have more than 4 non-resident employees here. It would just be a matter of shifting those other 2 employees to our Salisbury location with their dogs, obviously.
So you didn't consider downsizing before you came for the application? You know, for the reversal of the administrative application? So you've just continued business as usual?
No, because of opening the Salisbury location, I would say we had already shifted a good amount of what we did here, say last year, has already shifted over. If we have, so rather than 6, it's been 4 at a maximum. But I would say also because of COVID, our numbers are not where they were even last year. So I would say we've been continuously decreasing without wanting to overcrowd unnecessarily at our other location.
Thank you.
Could I just add one point to that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you. So in my communications with Mr. Burnett, first of all, when we withdrew the special permit renewal application in front of the planning board, which I believe was at the end of 2019, times kind of blended together with COVID. But there was discussion at that point upon the withdrawal, that was before Mr. Burnett came in, but discussion in front of the board at that point and with town officials of what we might do next. And we certainly, made clear that we would seek some other type of approval like this. And there were discussions with Mr. Sinibaldi, et cetera, prior to COVID. And then COVID came and then Mr. Burnett came in. The reason I'm bringing this up is that when Mr. Burnett denied the request for customary home occupation in July, he did indicate to me that as long as we were pursuing our remedies and bringing it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which he indicated to me was something not to say he could have stopped an appeal anyway, but he sort of invited our appeal to the board so that the board could make the decision. And he indicated to me that he was not going to take any kind of enforcement action so long as we were availing ourselves of our rights, which was sort of a similar conversation that we had at the planning board, that we would, be pursuing other avenues. As Jenny mentioned, the business was already shrinking, and we had indicated to the planning board that things would be downsizing because that period of time coincided with when she signed the lease in Salisbury. So we knew that transition would be happening. So it's not the case that that she didn't downsize or didn't make adjustments as between the special permit and now. She has been downsizing, but I did want to point out the conversation with Mr. Burnett where he indicated that no action will be taken against Seacoast for it continuing to operate in some capacity while we went through this process.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up to the public, but I don't want to if you spoke last month and you have something new, we'll hear it. But if it's just a repeat of the same information, please refrain from bringing it up again. We have all that information from last month. So Sue, if we have anybody with raised hands, this would be the time for them to speak.
Okay, I have a Denise Horan, so I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Denise Horan. I live on 11 Lund Street. I'm a resident of Byfield. I'm new to this. This is my first town meeting. I'm here just to give an example or what my experience has been with Seacoast. I met Jenny, and through my experience with her, she's been extremely professional. She was very good and adamant about making sure that my dog gets picked up here in my house. I live at 11 Lund Street, and Downfall Road is right next to me, and I've never even driven my car down there. She comes and picks up my dog and delivers the dog. So as a resident, I am a witness that she doesn't have a lot of traffic. And I just want to speak on her behalf and give you my experience as a resident, that Jenny has been very professional and has been excellent at making sure that I never even drive down the lane, and I haven't had a chance to ever have gone to the farm. I haven't even seen the farm, aside from the walks that I go down there. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
okay. Right now, I have no other raised hands. Ah, wait a minute. I have Elizabeth Woodworth. Oh.
Hi.
Yep.
Hi.
Good evening.
Yeah, Elizabeth Woodworth, 19 Downfall.
All right.
I did
Okay.
not, can you hear me?
Yep.
I did not speak last week and I wish to. After the last Newbury Zoning Board of Appeals hearing for Seacoast Canine's application for a customary home occupation, I felt the need to speak up. During the Zoom meeting, there were friends and employees of Seacoast Canine who spoke about how they have been treated poorly by our neighborhood during the 3 years Seacoast Canine has operated a business here on Downfall Road. I was surprised that we were characterized as unfriendly, rude, profane, prejudiced, jealous, and misogynistic. This is so not who the neighborhood is. People who live here and have lived here have always treated each other with respect and courtesy, whether or not they are friends. Everyone here wants to live in peace, do their own thing, but live in respect of the neighborhood and their neighbors. When Seacoast Canine moved their business to 35 Downfall Road in 2017, they immediately began their doggy daycare from the property. As a residentially zoned, previously quiet neighborhood made up of 3 dead-end streets, it was quite a shock to suddenly have multiple cars and trucks driving up and down the street all day long. As a neighborhood, we had no warning this was coming or even what was going on. We realized that it was a large dog daycare business operating at the very end of our narrow dead-end street and without a license. Because it was a business with multiple employees who drove their own cars, no one had any idea who was driving up and down our street. On a busy street like Main Street in Byfield, obviously with thousands of cars passing by every day, that is not of concern. It's to be expected. When traffic from one house changes the traffic count for the entire neighborhood, that makes a big difference. As the people involved at Seacoast Canine last zoning board meeting spoke, accusing the neighborhood as unwelcoming, I was thinking, well, yes, of course we feel put out. We never knew the owner of the property or anything except a person who shoved a large business down our throats, which increased traffic on our quiet residential streets by a huge amount. She was not a neighbor who tried to stay on the good side of the neighborhood. She bought the property in order to have a large dog business, disregarding the fact that it was not zoned any other than residential agricultural. Plus, it's a business that is dependent on having multiple employees, and since they don't live here, they don't really have any incentive to drive slowly and carefully. If the neighbors speak to them, it becomes a he said, she said, and the owner of the business has no proof. So what is she going to do? The police will never monitor such a small neighborhood when there are many other roads to monitor in our town. Why would they use their limited resources to be here in our neighborhood? We've asked them to be here and there has been no response. It's not as if the business was trying to be a small home-based office. After the business ran out without a license for a full year and they were asked for a special permit, they were asking for a 7-day-a-week operation with 6 classes a day on Saturday and 6 classes a day on Sundays, in addition to the 50+ dog daycare training operation during the other 5 days. Even after they were privileged to get a special permit from the Newbury Planning Board, they never followed the rules and restrictions that they were bound to. Because the town was unable to monitor the number of cars, the speed of the cars, the hours of the operations at Seacoast Canine, it has fallen on the neighbors to live with a situation that never should have happened. I asked the Newbury Planning Board, who was supposed to monitor the business under the special permit after it was obvious that Seacoast Canine was not holding up their end of the deal. And the response was, quote, "We thought she, Jen Ford, would monitor herself," unquote. Well, guess what? It hasn't worked. If the employees of Seacoast Canine think that we as neighbors should just get over it and deal with increased traffic in a residentially zoned neighborhood because of a commercial business, or think it's okay to veer towards an elderly person and cut away at the last second with their car, or when asked politely to slow down, one gets honked at loudly instead, it only points out the fact why so many towns in Massachusetts have carefully zoned areas so that businesses can thrive in an appropriate part of town and that people can live in a residential area in peace. Also, all of the employees who complained about neighbors yelling at them to slow down or being rude to them, how do you know that these people who are supposedly yelling at you live here on these 3 streets? There are many people who walk in our neighborhood. I would be surprised if any of the people involved in Seacoast Canine could differentiate who the neighbors are by sight or name. No one in this neighborhood cares about what sex, race, or business Seacoast is running down at 35 Downfall. We care that we live in a residentially zoned neighborhood with dead-end streets, and we would not expect to have to live with a commercial business at the end of our street that is dependent on multiple employees and multiple vehicles to run that business. Most of us moved here because it was not a throughway and not a main drag. No one is against Jen Ford as a person, as a businesswoman. No one is against her dog training or dog care or any other dog business. We are against a commercial business that is running from a residence at the end of a dead-end street, a narrow residentially zoned street, and a business that has been detrimental to our peaceful existence here. Be a courteous neighbor, respect your neighbors, and act like it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sue, anyone else?
Yep, there is a Rebecca Mountain.
Okay,
Hi, thank you. I wanted to speak to the comment about Jenny being a courteous neighbor because I've been her friend. I'm sorry, I'm Rebecca Mountain at 9 Larkin Road, Byfield. Sorry. So she, I remember when she was looking for a house, when she was trying to decide where she was, going to move after moving out of her grandmother's house on Main Street. And she was looking at a lot of different properties, not just in Byfield, not just in Newbury. And she had a lot of, places she could have chosen from that would have been, a lot less expensive for her and maybe would have made a lot more economical sense for her business. But, she looked at several places near Larkin Road where I live. And a lot of the properties she looked at, she told me, oh no, that's not going to work because it's too close to the neighbors. It's too close. The dogs might bark and it might disturb them. I need to choose some place with a lot of land that's going to be far from neighbors so it won't bother people. And so that's why she ended up looking at Downfall Road. It was at the end of a dead end street, as been pointed out. It was a huge property, and it had all these horse trails. It was, already a horse farm. And it was just seemed like the perfect place. It was quiet, it was out of the way, and it wouldn't bother anyone. And I think also to this point, she could have gone a lot of different places, but she's from Byfield. She chose to stay here. She chose to invest in Newbury as a town. And, I think that's really great that someone who was born and raised here chose to stay and invest in her community. And I think, you know, I understand there are a lot of concerns here, but she has done her absolute very best every step of the way. And I think it's time that Newbury invest in her as much as she is invested in Newbury. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Amanda Cannon?
Hello. Am I unmuted this time?
You are, we
Yep.
can hear you.
All right, just making sure. So again, I spoke a lot last month. There's just a few things that I want to touch base on. So I do know.
Amanda, what's your address again?
32 Downfall Road.
Thank you.
Yep. So I did get told that during this whole process, there wouldn't be any, just like the lawyer said, there would be no things done against her. She had to follow her special permit that was done 2 years ago, that then they pulled away from, which included a certain amount of trips, certain amount, again, the signs on the side of the trucks, the vehicles, that unfortunately wasn't able to be done because they kept falling off. So she then agreed that she would have flashing lights. So this was something that the planning board had agreed with her, that this was part of her special permit. And unfortunately, within the last year and a half, to where she's supposed to follow this special permit while she goes through you guys, she doesn't. There are no flashing lights. There are no hazard lights as her employees drive up and down this road. And I don't understand if she does end up getting the customary home occupancy business, who is going to enforce these rules? Who is going to be on my road every day to make sure that she only has 2 employees that don't live here? Because that's where me and all the other residents have become the bad guy. We have to police our road to make sure that it's safe for our children and our dogs and the other people that walk, that work in different places over near you guys on Kent Way, that walk our streets, that have their kids ride their bikes up and down the road, to make sure that they're following those rules. And if she at one point in time went for a customary home occupancy business, got denied it. She didn't fight that she got denied that. She knew that she got denied that and went for the special permit. So if at one point in time she needed a special permit, why wouldn't she need one now? I don't understand to what changes that aspect of it. I know that she stated that her business she was able to have 6 cars that were non-residents. That's kind of to who says, it says 6 non-resident and resident. Her brother's vehicle to this day is still registered to New Hampshire. I pay excise tax to Newbury because my car is registered to Newbury. So for him to be a resident here, I don't understand how his vehicle is not counted as a non-resident trip because it's not registered to Byfield. So she said that her trips got cut in half. Well, then when we were in front of the planning board, it got said the lunch trips, the trip that her one employee takes down here to pick up a commercial vehicle, then leave to go pick up animals, then comes back. That's 3 trips just for one way, not counting dropping off the vehicles, not dropping off the dogs. Sorry, not vehicles. So it's those type of things. And even at this point, she's trying to say that she's cutting back. She's not as active here, but yet she just told you that she has 4 non-resident employees working, plus her brother. His car is not registered to here, so his car needs to be counted as a non-resident. again, the man's nice. We wave, we smile. I'm not going to say anything about that. He drives amazing up and down the road. He's polite. He slows down. He pulls over. But unfortunately, he's not a resident of Byfield if he doesn't have a car registered. The vehicle that he drives isn't registered. So those are just a couple new things. I apologize if I reiterated what I said last month, but it's just those random things that if you needed a special permit once, then why don't you now? Why didn't they fight it back then when they went for the special permit? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got another one, Noreen Waddell.
Hi, I live on Two Lenway Road. I just wanted to sort of speak out to what I believe Jen's friend Rebecca said about Jen looking at various other properties, and she chose Byfield because of the huge property. It was a horse farm. That's all well and good. But what the neighborhood is concerned about is the increased traffic. So for her to, just to talk about the property and how it's great is fine and dandy. But again, what we're concerned about is the traffic. I have 2 dogs. I walk them every day, up and down Lenway, up and down Downfall. I go to River, Forest Street. We're all over the place. And just about every day, I'm signaling people to slow down on Downfall Road. And I know everyone in this neighborhood, and they're not my neighbors. I've been honked at. I've been come close to by cars. Jen is great. She, drives slowly, as does her brother. Like Amanda said, her brother's very nice. I wave, I smile. And I wasn't here for the last Zoom meeting, but I was appalled to hear about Jen's character witnesses attacking our neighborhood and the neighbors saying that people are being sweared at and things like that, because that is not us at all. We are a phenomenal neighborhood. I moved from Newburyport. I grew up in Newburyport, and this house on Two Lenway Road was the first house that I looked at, and I fell in love with the neighborhood because it was a closed neighborhood. And since Jen has moved in with her business, it's totally changed the landscape. And nobody is saying anything derogatory about Jen's character, Jen's ability to be a trainer. It's just the increased traffic and the commercial business in a residential area. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
I'm not seeing any more hands at the moment.
All right, I have a question for the applicant. One of the people that just spoke mentioned that you did apply for a customary home permit and were denied. Can you tell us about that?
That's not true.
Okay,
When I was at 109 Main Street, we had the home occupation. When I moved, we continued because Dory, who's one of my friends, but also one of our trainers, lived here. And for probably 6 months, we didn't require more than 2 employees. And so we continued operating under the same home occupation that we did on Main Street. And then once we needed more than 2 non-resident employees, we applied for the special permit.
okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask the members again, any more questions or comments, Eric, before we start discussion?
There's another resident who has a comment. Would you like to take it?
Yeah, we'll take another one. For someone new.
I can't see your name, so I don't know who you are.
This is Tom Rogers, 15 Church Street. I'm at the corner of Downfall and Church Street.
Okay,
My wife Trish and I have lived here for 35 years. We raised 2 girls here, and it's been a great neighborhood, peaceful, great neighbors. But I I just felt I have to speak toward the increase in traffic over the last couple of years. And also the fact that because of the coronavirus, everybody's out walking. It's incredible how many more people are walking with their kids on bicycles down Downfall Road. So I just wanted to back up the claims that the traffic has increased. I have nothing against the dog business. I like small business, and I wish Jen all the luck in the world with it. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that there is an increase in traffic, and that'll do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Eric, do you have any more questions for the applicant or any comments at this point?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, Mario, how about you?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that a couple things. One is, are there now only 2 full-time employees?
For the entire business, or you mean for the farm?
For the kennel?
We don't even have a kennel, but we would
The
be moving-
35 downfall, I think is what he's asking.
Yeah, we would move down to 2 employees here.
Okay, and it's 5 days a week
Yes.
and 5 hours a day?
I would say 9 to 3 is the outside windows of that. Yeah.
Okay, 5 to 6 hours. Okay, that's it.
Okay. All right, we're going to close the meeting for discussion now. I think looking at the customary home occupation part of the bylaws, it's somewhat ambiguous. Whereas if you look at the table of uses, it's pretty specific to daycare for animals needs a special permit granted by the planning board. And comments from the public, I don't want to say it's all he said, she said, but you have neighborhood people that seem to all be in agreement that there's increased traffic, greatly increased traffic, and that the business, which is very well supported by employees and customers, haven't really lived up to what the planning board wanted when they had a special permit. So I think it's up to us to decide whether it is, obviously a customary home occupation, which is an ambiguous part of the bylaws, in my opinion, for this, as opposed to the specifics of the table of uses. What do you think? Eric or Mario?
A couple things. One, as everyone has mentioned here, we've looked at the criteria for the CHOs, and basically number 2, 3, 4, and 5 have all been met. We've gone over them a number of times, and I do believe the gray area resides in the first one, where it's secondary to residential use. So I tried to put some data to this as much as we could versus emotions and he said, she said. So the questions I asked earlier about the hours of use and how many days. So I looked at it this way. I said, there's 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. There's 168 hours in a week. Seacoast Canine operates 5 days a week, and that's 25 days a week with 5 hours to 6 hours. So it's anywhere between 25 to 30 hours a week. And so what percent of that is residential and what percent is business? And, you know, if you do the math, it's either anywhere between 14 to 16, 17% is business and anywhere between 82, 83, 84% is residential. So that's what I've come to, that it seems to be secondary as it relates to the number of hours in use.
Okay, Eric?
I should say, midway through your discussion, so I missed that. And I think I picked up just as Mario was beginning. So if I repeat myself or not, I understand what Mario was doing is trying to define it. And I might back up and say that, you know, the purpose and intent of the ZBA is to interpret and uphold the zoning bylaws as written, and understanding that they are bylaws and there is some interpretation that goes along with what is here. The question and the premise being that if it isn't written, it's assumed otherwise, and if it is written, then it is what it is. So that understanding that home occupations are permitted, but it's clearly in the table of uses that the animal daycare during the daytime requires a special permit, which is not, the ZBA is not the granting authority for. So, and since this has gone back and forth, I know there can be interpretations and reinterpretations, but I guess that is the first step in trying to understand that this is actually before us in the proper manner and shouldn't be before the planning board, because it is clearly listed in the zoning use table, first and foremost. Understanding what everybody's saying about the residents and on both sides, and there's some understanding there. But the first piece of the discussion is the understanding of what the bylaws say and whether this is in the right place and we're in the right jurisdiction, first and foremost. Then if it's deemed to be before us, then it is a decision of whether it meets the definition of the customary home care in section 10, or whether it's clearly just listed in the table. So, and then we can debate primary use versus accessory use, principal use, commercial use. We can have a discussion on that, but I think we need to start on understanding that in reading through our bylaws, that if something is clearly as printed as animal daycare, daytime only, special permit in RAG, then it needs a special permit. There is no definition that says that the occupations here listed within for other things like nursing homes or hospitals. If a hospital medical center only has 2 employees, does that make it customary home care? How do we make that interpretation?
Right. So maybe you didn't hear what I said, or is that what you said? You didn't hear my
I heard half of what you said, and I think you were sort of saying the same thing.
Yeah, that the customary home occupation's ambiguous and it's pretty specific with a special permit. Brian, can you weigh in on this for us? Are we looking at this the right way?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. And again, for the record, Brian Winter from Town Council's office. So, you know, there are a couple of sort of analytical pieces to this that I think the board, unfortunately, is going to have to struggle with, because there isn't a clear-cut answer in the bylaw. Obviously, if it were just written on the page, we wouldn't be having this debate. So the first stage, you know, that you'd have to consider is it ambiguous? And I think we can put that behind us. Based on what I just heard, there seems to be a consensus that there are some ambiguities here, and which provision is going to control and you know, supersede another if we get that far. So the first thing that I might ask you to look at is start with your building commissioner's order. And what he found was that the specific call out to this use as a special permit use controls. So there's a sort of tenet of interpretation that the specific controls the general. And as I heard mentioned just a moment ago, there is a specific reference to, animal daycare daytime in the table of uses. Now that's referencing a principal use, I should note, for the sake of fairness. So that's the table of principal uses. So you could start with that and decide whether or not that controls, any animal daycare daytime, in the district, and therefore end of story, it requires a special permit. But it's not that simple, because now you have a conflicting provision or seemingly conflicting provision where you have a by right customary home occupation that seems to be an independent use. And in fact, it's identified itself in the table of uses under commercial uses, principal use, customarily accessory to allowed uses, and it's permitted. So you have accessory uses that are called out too, as well as the customary home occupation. So the question is, how do you reconcile those two things? And what the building commissioner concluded was that the way to do it was that the specific controlled the general, and that if town meeting saw fit to pull out certain uses and attach a special permit to them, then that was an indication of the will of town meeting to do that. So that was the conclusion he reached. Now, because there's an appeal properly before you of that decision, you stand in his shoes. So you're not bound by that conclusion, but you're asked to sort of judge it as a panel of zoning board judges here. So you have all the authority to make that determination, and you can agree with that. You could see it a different way, or you could come up with yet another possibility if you think that fits. But at the end of the day, you have to reconcile those competing interests. So if a customary home occupation is allowed by right, notwithstanding what's stated in the table of uses for other kinds of uses, then in fact, anything in the table of uses could be undertaken in any district where a customary home occupation is allowed, even if it was a prohibited use. So if you went down the table of uses looking at it, through a different lens, and you saw a prohibited use, well, that would be allowable too as a customary home occupation. So that's one, consideration that you may want to look at. Is that the proper interpretation? And it could be, it could be also a potential conclusion that by creating this carve out of a by right customary home occupation, town meeting's intent was to allow these limited kind of businesses, to exist, anywhere. And the way you might be able to reconcile that is to say that if it rise to the level of a principal use or a dominant use and was no longer a customary home occupation or quote unquote secondary and accessory, well, then the special permit would get triggered, because that's what the table of uses says. If it's a principal use, it requires a special permit. So once it becomes a dominant use of the property, it could get triggered. So that would be another way to look at it too. And, I can't tell you, I'm not a voting member of any board, let alone this one. So I can't tell you what the right answer is for your community. You're the experts in terms of the character of your community, the history of your community, the history of your application of the zoning bylaw. So those are the skills that you have and the expertise that you have to bring to bear on this question and decide which is the right way to point it. And, unfortunately, I might as well just say this out loud, but, you're never, I don't think you're going to reach a conclusion here where you've checked every single box and you're 100% confident that it's the right answer and it's the clear answer. You're going to have some hesitations because there are ambiguities here, and there are going to be arguments on both sides and reasonable arguments on both sides. So don't struggle to get the perfect result, because I don't think you're going to necessarily find one. Your goal is to get the most reasonable result based on the language of your bylaw and your expertise as zoning board members and stewards of your community. So I hope
Thank
that is helpful.
Somewhat. Thank you. Thank you. So, Eric and Mario, what town council just said was helpful, but really didn't point us in one direction or the other, I don't think.
Howie, if I may,
Yep, go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yep.
So in terms of making a decision, as what Brian eloquently and I think fairly and even though the road stated, is that it either comes down to a use. And if we allow the use as customary home, then you would think that it is within the smaller parameters of a business, and that if it is deemed to be a larger business, then the table of uses is trying to regulate it. And I think the ZBA certainly could make that decision. Hearing from the residents in both sides, there seems to be some issues and concerns. What the ZBA is not is we could make a motion and make stipulations, but we don't have a site plan review, a use review. We look at site plans and interpret the use of the dimensional criteria, but we don't go through a process of a business like you would for a development and understanding. And if that was the case, then this application is nowhere near ready to be heard, because the whole official exact of what is being proposed is not clearly anywhere on a piece of paper. So we can either make a decision on use simply as that, or we can decide to defer it back to the planning board and let them decide on a special permit process in which they would do site plan review and their typical standard due diligence.
Right. Well, I somewhat agree with you, Eric, that we're not being asked to really make any limits or regulations for this customary home occupation permit. And we can't do that with what we're being asked. We're just being asked whether we support the building inspector's decision or not. And the planning board did give them a special permit and gave them guidelines to go by. And I don't think we're in a position to do that. You agree? I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I think you probably more clearly said what I was thinking, that the planning board would be the board to set the special permit and the conditions of the use, as we would just be deciding the question of use.
Right. Mario, I know when you spoke before, you think you were leaning, or I'm not trying to interpret exactly what you said, but that because when you did the data, that you thought that it was maybe 20% of the use of the property, but do you think that that's actually what's before us? By hearing,
The only thing I was trying to interpret was the first comment in the CHO is if it was secondary to residential use.
right, right.
And so,
All right. I guess I'm leaning towards supporting the building inspector's decision, because I think that if it went back to the planning board, if that was their choice, that they've had experience with the business and the workout regulations, maybe that would be more suitable than just giving them a blanket home occupancy or home customary home occupation permit. I guess it's time to vote on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we deny the appeal to the ZBA, stating that we feel that the decision of a special permit, because it's clearly listed in the table of use, belongs with the planning board. And that the ZBA isn't saying whether the business is right, wrong, or indifference, and we certainly wish every Newbury resident the right to have a business and to prosper within our town. But in terms of setting standards and regulations to meet the general provisions to promote the health, the safety, and the welfare of all residents, it's not in our position to set the regulations of this use. And so therefore we defer back to the table of use regulations and to the planning board to hear this.
Okay,
I
we have a
second that motion.
Okay, Eric.
Yes.
Okay, Mario,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. So the appeal is denied.
So this this goes back to the building inspector, where it then the building automatically gets deferred to the planning board. Brian, do you have a?
Yeah, may I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go right ahead, Brian.
So the next step is that if it's your wish, Ms. Noyes and I will prepare a written decision with findings and reflecting the board's vote tonight. That'll get filed with the town clerk, and then the applicant has the ability and the option to appeal that to court. They also could not appeal it if they choose to not appeal it, and they could comply with it. But that period has to pass and decisions have to be made before we know exactly whose lap this will land on next. And, depending on whether or not there's an appeal or whether or not there's a second application or something else, there'll be a period of time for everyone to speak with their counsels and decide what the next step will be. But then we'll know where it goes next.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, so are we all set now?
Yep.
Okay. We'll move
Mr.
on to the next hearing then.
Public hearings, Joseph and Elizabeth Novak, 5 Withington Street, continued hearing. The applicant is requesting an administrative appeal / variance for the relief from section 97-6 of the Newbury zoning bylaw to extend an existing porch not meeting the street setback for the property located at 5 Withington Street, Newbury, Mass. Assessors map U06-0-63.
Good evening. The applicant's here.
Hi.
Yep.
Okay, so last month we asked you to come back with some more information for us. So go ahead and present what you have.
Sure. So based off of the inspector's response and the discussion that we had last week, you guys wanted us to go through the application for the special finding from the Board of Appeals rather than the original way we were going. So we had filled out the application in similar fashion in terms of the base information, but then included, I believe there was 4 questions within the application that are essentially the supporting facts. So there's a document that is within that is titled Finding Fact 5 Withington Street Porch Extension, as well as I magnified the areas of question on the plot proposal map, just because I think with the way that it gets printed by most people's printers, it's extremely small. So the magnified one should help give everyone a sense of actually what the distances are and what we're looking at in terms of the existing to proposed. I'm not sure if you want me to run through the 4 fact statements or if there's anything else you would rather have.
Well, tell us what you've changed in the application
Okay.
from when you saw us last.
Okay, so basically, I think the layout of the application is slightly different, but we have included more readable information in terms of the map and the distance of the existing structure to the end of the plot, which the previous one only had for the proposed porch, whereas we included that on the first for the existing and the proposed that are both magnified in the page called the PDF zoning board proposal magnification. So you can see there's a distance to the front setback on the new strange deck structure that's in place existing. And then the new one is underneath that, and they're both essentially that left top corner of the plot that we live on. So the main point within the inspector's process and going to the zoning board is the setback in this area of town is in the front, it's 20 feet as a minimum and 6 feet, or 10 feet on the sides and rear. But for anyone that's ever been by the fire department, it doesn't have the large amounts of land that other places do. So a lot of the homes are in that area. So we have this essentially corner of the lot where our house is on. And so with that, the minimum setback for the existing on the front sides, A and B and rear, are within the application. And then the minimum for the proposed amount, which essentially shows if the question is this a detrimental, I can't remember the wording, if this is a detrimental more so than the existing proposal. And I think through looking at the magnified area of that and taking into account that this is something that's been in place for 40 years roughly, I can't recall off the top of my head, kind of restructuring that.
Before my sister.
Roughly 40 years, maybe 45. Basically, it's this, we're taking this area that is non-conforming, effectively making it slightly better in terms of the non-conformance. It's not drastic, it's about a foot. Not non-conforming in any other area that's greater than it already is. And I also included some information in terms of, even though it doesn't seem it's required for this, but the lot coverage and the FAR, which I think goes to support that this is a change because we're enclosing or covering a porch rather than having it be uncovered, but it is not any drastic change to like the plot itself, other than what we're presenting with the magnified section of that proposal that you guys can view.
Okay. So Eric, is that clear enough to you what they're doing now on this new plan?
It was, but somehow I've misplaced the plan in, I don't have it before me, right in front of me.
Okay.
So I'd like to be clear about that. I don't know if there's a way to share it on the screen or show it.
I think I have it. I think I can share it
Okay.
on my.
If you need to, I can send it over to this computer from the other one next to it and show it. But if you already have
If Mario, if you have it, that. And we
Yeah,
could-
I'm trying to look for my share. Okay, share screen. Here it is. There you go. It should pop up right now. Can you see it?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
That's the original. That's the existing.
What we currently have right now.
This is the one you're speaking to?
Yeah, so the top one that's being shown right now is the existing structure because essentially the layout of the house at the front is very strange and has essentially rocks and some other stuff in front of that area, and the previously built structure from 40 something years ago ends up looking like this weird math problem. And then the distance that we had included in the draft or the files that were sent after the last meeting is that 5-foot setback of the current structure that wasn't on there previously, at least in terms of the map.
So what you're saying is you're getting rid of the steps completely and then extending the deck across the face of the front of the house.
Yeah.
To meet up with the deck that we currently have on the side of the house.
Right. And so what is the width of the deck from the front door to the end of the deck?
Excuse me, Mario, you need to go to the scroll down to the proposed. So
Yeah,
this will show
there
you
you
what-
go.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so I think the intent that we were asking for was to show the existing condition of 5 feet, which was reported, and show that the deck, in fact, is improving upon the condition to 6'6".
Right, but actually it's 5.8, Eric, on the other
Yeah,
side.
you have to look over to the far end.
Understood. I'm just saying that at the point of what we could not tell last
Right.
Okay.
week was the difference of 6.6 to what is it currently. And so now what is presented in the diagram up above is that it's actually 5 feet existing.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Okay, so is there still anybody in the public that wants to speak? Raised hand?
Mario, can you stop sharing your screen,
Yeah.
please?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mario.
There you go. No problem.
It doesn't appear that anybody is interested in speaking at this time.
All right, thanks, Sue. All right, so I think they brought us what we needed to know. You both satisfied with what they brought?
Yes, I think that, yeah, that's exactly what we asked for in terms of a clarification of the site plan presented.
Right, okay. So I think we can entertain a motion. If anybody wants to.
I'll entertain a motion to
It's a finding, Eric.
it's a finding for an administrative, I'll grant a motion for a finding for administrative appeal for the fact that there is an existing building line that's currently established for the nonconformity, and that the proposed addition is actually extending and improving upon the setback requirements, and therefore is not more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Do we have a
Second
second?
that motion.
Okay, Eric,
Yes.
Mario?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote in favor. Motion passes. Okay, so Sue will be in touch with you about after the decision is written, and good luck with it.
All right, thank you
Thank
very much.
Okay.
And Howie, you'll receive a new application with the new sketch in it.
I assume that Sue received it. I didn't receive one. I just have the email.
Right.
Yeah, I have.
We have a complete, we have an updated complete application in your hands, so that's what I'm asking.
Correct. Yes, we do.
That's all, just not, sometimes these things get pieced together, sometimes they're completely presented.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Public hearings, Valerie and Edward Wenzel for Riverfront, continued hearing. The applicant is requesting a variance for relief from section 97-6 of the Newbury zoning bylaw, as the proposed construction of a 25 by 25 garage will not meet the required setbacks for the property located at 4 Riverfront, Newbury, Mass, Assessors Map R11-0-62.
Okay, the applicant's with us.
They are.
Yes, we are.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Okay, we're well. So we asked you to come back with some more information, and I know Sue forwarded us quite a bit of new information, but if you just want to tell us what you did since we last met.
Yes. So there were 4 things that you had asked for at the last meeting. And first was to provide a plan that showed all the houses on the street.
Right.
It was on the original map, but what I did was I blew it up so that I believe there's 13 houses on the street.
Right.
To show, you know, where everything was situated compared to ourselves. And you also wanted a sewer plan with the septic printout. And I provided that. It was done back in January of '97. And I did a graph of it before I showed the existing house with the proposed attached garage. And so this part moves over to the west side and shows where the septic field is and the septic tank and the septic cover. And so that takes up about 48 feet of the grass area, which is really the only other area that we would have to put the garage.
Okay.
And the other thing was the thanks to Eric, I believe he helped me get the proper numbers to put on page 2A to show existing setbacks and show the proposed. So that's a revised application piece that we gave.
Okay, so I think they did provide us with everything we asked for and showed us what the topographical hardship was with the septic tank being located in the only other open space. They showed us that houses vary from being on the street to very few feet off the street. And you think there's anything else that we need? I think they covered everything.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I might add a comment.
Sure, go right ahead.
I did do a drive-by and look at the property and understand, the road layout is particular because of the contours of the site and that location along the river from where the embankment is and where the solid ground is, and obviously jogged to stay on solid ground. I was thinking that if there was a way to push the garage back or even have it even with the house, but you could not access it from the east side of the property. So that's what I just want to make that observation.
Okay. Mario, do you have any comments on
No,
the presentation?
no.
Okay, so I think if everybody's happy with the information provided, we can look for a motion.
Sure. So, yes, I will propose a motion for requesting the variance from relief from section 97-6 of the Newbury zoning bylaws for the proposed garage addition. Even though it does not meet the setbacks, there is an established existing property line that is closer to the street. There are existing land conditions that would prevent other use of the site. And so with that, make the motion to find that the proposed addition would not be more detrimental to the existing context of the neighborhood.
Okay, excuse me, Eric, I think this is a variance, so we have to grant a variance, not a finding.
I said variance originally because I read the, sorry, I might have misconstrued that and adding the finding, but yes, it is a motion to grant a variance from relief from section 97-6.
All right, okay, just wanted to make it clear, that's all.
Right.
Second?
Second that? Yeah, I'll second that.
Eric?
Yes.
Mario?
Yes.
Yes for me, the motion passes. Okay.
Great.
Okay, thanks for bringing everything we needed. It made it much easier.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, Eric and Mario.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, happy building.
Thanks, Susan, too, yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, onwards. Let's see, public hearing. The Cottages Commercial LLC, 14 Plum Island Boulevard. The applicant is requesting a finding for relief from section 97-4D, part 4 of the Newbury zoning bylaws for a change from an automotive repair sales to a single family use to a restaurant use for the property located at 24 Old Point Road, Newbury, Mass. On Assessor's Map U02-0-154. So Mr. Chairman, should I read the second one, and are these totally separate or are they combined?
Let me ask Brian, if you could weigh in on that, Brian.
Mr. Chairman, you may also want to ask Attorney Griffin for his comments after mine, but based on my prior involvement with a similar application last year, I believe it was. I believe that the two applications overlap a great deal and are somewhat integrated. So it may be in everyone's best interest to combine and consolidate the public hearings on both.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you with us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, do you think that's acceptable to you?
We absolutely have no objection to you hearing both at the same time.
All right, thank you. Okay,
Excellent.
Art, read the second one.
In addition, public hearing, the Cottages Commercial LLC, 14 Plum Island Boulevard. The applicant is requesting a finding for relief from section 97-4D of the Newbury zoning bylaw for a change from an accessory building of an auto repair school to restaurant use for the property located at 88R Old Point Road, Newbury, Mass. On Assessor's Map U02-0-153.
Okay, good evening. Okay, if you're ready, Mark, you can make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mark Griffin, I'm an attorney at Finneran and Nicholson in Newburyport at 30 Green Street. I represent the applicants, Cottage Commercial LLC in this matter. The principal of that LLC is Vincent Godin, who is also on this Zoom meeting tonight, as well as several other folks from the project team and the prospective tenant. And the architect, Joe Stromer, is in attendance. And finally, Bo Sturm from the prospective restaurant tenant is also in attendance. And we'd respectfully request, Mr. Chairman, that you allow them to speak as part of the presentation.
Yep, it's no problem.
So first off, though, I'll go through some of the existing conditions and a little bit of the procedural history, which has been alluded to already by some of the board members. As for the existing conditions, I'm just going to ask Joe Stromer to share his screen, if that's all right, and bring up the schematic design existing conditions plan.
Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of them. The schematic, that's it, right there. The smaller one, yep. So that's the existing conditions plan. And it's the same existing conditions that the board was shown during our hearings in front of you last year, actually in 2018 and 2019, or a permit was received in 2019. So as you can see, the properties are shown on this plan. There's a zoning table on the plan. The first lot, 2 Old Point Road, is shown on the plan. Both properties are located in the residential agricultural zoning district and in the PIOD. The lot itself is located at the intersection of Plum Island Boulevard and Old Point Road. The former owner was the Macheros family, and it was owned by the Mach 4 Realty Trust during that time. It contains an existing single-family residential home. This is 2 Old Point Road, and an auto shop repair building. A used car sales business was also run on that premises. Both of the structures are pre-existing legally non-conforming. Moreover, the auto shop repair service station business is a pre-existing legally non-conforming use, having been in existence since prior to the enactment of the PIOD. Both of the buildings are constructed on grade. This lot has about 21,636 square feet of lot area. It's legally non-conforming where 40,000 is required. The lot has 260, almost 269 feet of frontage. Existing lot coverage is not quite 17%, and FAR is slightly over 15%. With respect to 8R Old Point Road, this one's got a pre-existing legally non-conforming single-family home and a legally non-conforming garage building, which was utilized by the former owner, again, Machuro's family, as an auto repair school. The structures are legally non-conforming, and the auto repair school was a legally non-conforming use. Once again, in existence prior to the enactment of the PIOD. This lot's got slightly over 20,000 square feet of lot area. Also, again, in the residential agricultural district. So it requires 40,000 feet, and it's got 143 feet of frontage. Little over 11% lot coverage and a little over 13 FAR. And so the petitioner received approval for 2 findings from the ZBA in May of 2019 to operate a restaurant, restaurant use on both parcels. And during the hearings, the petitioner proved to the satisfaction of the ZBA that the uses were pre-existing non-conforming on each parcel prior to the zoning changes that made them non-conforming. The ZBA further found that such a change in use would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what exists. And so essentially, although we filed 2 finding applications, essentially what we're doing is modifying our previous permit that was received. So this proposal is really what it amounts to is a scaled back, much lower impact proposal. And so, let's walk a little bit down memory lane and go back to the 2019, permit proposal that was permitted. And so, Joe, if you could just on your screen share, go to the 2019 rendering. So you can see that this was a rather large building that was proposed, and the buildings basically were being torn down. The existing buildings were being torn down and replaced with this. Not all of the buildings, but this one was a almost 4,900 square foot restaurant building with 158 seats, many of which would be indoors, and so. The permit still is valid. It's good for 2 years. However, this building is no longer viable as an actual restaurant use during the pandemic. And unfortunately, we don't have any idea when the pandemic will end. And so in order for restaurants to survive, they have to do things other than feed diners indoors. And provide drinks indoors. And so this proposal to scale back the originally permitted restaurant tries to accommodate for that. And so, what we're trying to do with the new proposal is to drastically shrink the size of this proposal and really not do anything other than remove some buildings and provide a lot of outdoor seating. So it's a much smaller plan, and it's much more geared to outdoor dining. And so, I'm going to turn it over right now to the architect, Joe Stromer, and he's going to sort of walk you folks through what's being proposed. Thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Great. My name is Joe Stromer. I'm the principal of Joe the Architect with an office at 343 Medford Street, Suite 4C in Somerville, Massachusetts. So essentially what the proposal is not a whole lot of building. In reality, it's an outdoor seating space. So as you can see here on our site plan, what we're doing is we're removing this single-family residential building and creating an outdoor seating space here. The back end of the lot would be used for parking spaces. We would have 55 parking spaces, 5 for employees, 50 for guests, which would get us a seating count of 166 based on the zoning code for parking. The existing garage would remain in place and be used to support service for the patio seating. So we would have 2 toilet rooms inside the barn area, as well as 4 porta potties located outside in the lot. We would also have a mobile kitchen, so a food truck, if you will, to support food for when the patio is in use. But the idea here is to keep the impact with the actual building structure as minimal as possible. Just to go to sort of a conceptual seating plan of the space that outlines it a little bit more, we would have sort of food and bar service from inside the existing barn with those 2 restrooms, as well as storage for the restaurant and a dishwashing station and sort of support spaces for the rest of the patio. We would have seating out in the main area of the patio. All of this is really focused and facing towards the marsh, and the idea here is to really provide diners a great place to enjoy those sunsets that happen out over the marsh after a day at the beach. The existing building here, which unfortunately recently had a fire, may or may not stay or go, but we have no other plans to build any other structure there. And then we have some area for games, lawn games, and then some porta potties.
So let me just ask you, is there no indoor seating?
Very limited. So right now we have planned for 24 people indoors, and that's really just based off of the amount of space that's there and COVID safety for being able to fit however many people can actually safely dine in that indoor space. So the vast majority is.
Okay. Would that just be a service bar, or is that, I understand under the COVID rules now, nobody can sit at a bar anyhow, but is it a service bar in there or a bar as well as tables?
It could potentially be used as seating at the bar in the future. I'll let the restaurant owners speak to that, okay. But for the time being, it would be a service bar for the patio area.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a little bit nicer of a render view, but again, you can see that we have the existing barn staying, and that's really servicing this, spaced seating area that we know we can serve people safely while we still deal with the pandemic and provide great outdoor seating space for the guests. With the mobile kitchen, we have accessibility both for parking as well as an accessible restroom, toilet room in the barn itself.
Okay, and then the area over by the sand pit, you've got 4 bathrooms. Are those the porta potties?
Those are the porta potties, correct.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So those would be closed in with fence areas so that they're not visible and not an eyesore from either the public way or any of the rest of the site.
Okay.
And then just some very conceptual renderings of what that space might look like. But the idea is essentially very spacious seating to make sure that everybody has safe space to enjoy being outside and catching the sunset during the summer.
Okay, and that one building you're showing there is the indoor seating area?
Correct. That's the existing barn.
Right.
Happy to answer any other questions that you might have, but that's essentially quick and easy. There's not a lot of building.
Right. Okay. I have no other questions at this point.
So, Mr. Chairman, would it be okay if I turn it over to Vincent Godin to speak towards his intent with this project?
Yep, go right ahead.
Does anybody still need to see the rendering here?
Don't need it now.
Okay. Do you want to, yep, there we go. Thank you, Joe.
We can get it back if we need it.
Vincent, we can't hear you.
Yeah, he's unmuted on my end, so.
Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if it didn't happen, right?
That's right.
I'm going to try muting you and unmuting you again and see what that does.
That work?
There we go.
Got it.
Sorry about that. All right, I'm Vincent Godin, 28 Harvard Way in Newbury. I'm one of the owners of the property. Since we last met a little over a year ago, obviously a lot has changed, as evidenced by us having to meet over video now. But one of the most affected industries during the last 8 months has been the restaurant industry. While we spent a lot of time, energy, and money designing the project that you guys approved last year, it's just unfortunately not feasible for health and safety purposes, and honestly wouldn't be financeable right now. And it may not even conform to the changing tastes people will have in deciding, where they want to eat and how they want to dine in the future. But over the last few years, as we've been educating ourselves on the restaurant industry, probably our most valued source for advice and feedback has been Bo Sturm from the Paddle Inn in downtown Newburyport. Over the summer, we were talking about the restaurant site and the current industry challenges, and out of that came the idea for a collaboration between our groups to create a restaurant that would not only work in the current health environment, but something that would allow Plum Island's nature and views to be highlighted, especially for those driving on and off the island versus the current structures and asphalt that really just don't do the island justice. We're really excited to work with Bo, who's a Newbury resident, and his entire team who have fallen in love with Plum Island as much as we have. And I'll turn it over to him to talk a little bit more about his vision for the actual restaurant operation. We'd be glad to answer any other questions the board has.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to hear us today. And I think that Joe and Vincent spoke very well to what our intent is with this project. My partner, Josh Childs, is also on this call, and either one of us would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the actual restaurant concept. But I think that the biggest thing that got the two groups involved with each other is that in this current climate with COVID, we don't know what the clientele is going to want moving forward, but we do know that we can create a safe, visually appealing place for the residents on Plum Island and for beachgoers. So in saying that, we kind of had this idea that we would have a lot of outdoor space, and Josh and I have decades of experience in what I think that we've done very well in our 10, 12 years of partnership is identifying what the different communities need or different communities are lacking. And Plum Island is a great area and a wonderful community, and it has 1,000 or so houses, Vincent?
I believe it's, yeah, about 1,200.
1,200. And, you know, so I think that there is a year-round component that could be there, and as well as a very good seasonal component that could be there for us. The coming onto the island is a very, it's the gateway to the island, and I think that we could really be visually appealing. We can be appealing to the residents, and I'm sorry, Josh, would you mind filling in a little bit?
No, not at all. Bo led off because he's such a part of the community there, living in Newbury himself, and has really spearheaded, although we did the build out and so on together in Newburyport at the Paddle Inn, really spearheaded the idea of the area and kind of growth there, and has been in talks with Jeff and Vincent for quite some time. The thing that strikes me the most, while I'm not up as often as I'd like to be, being stuck in Somerville with Joe all the time, but is quite literally what Bo just said. It's really the gateway to Plum Island. And I think that not just a family-friendly restaurant environment, but an aesthetic enhancement, kind of outdoor space, really creating almost a vacation in of itself. I think we all know that COVID has changed dramatically the restaurant environment and economy, but also everyone and everyone's desire to be able to travel, even if it's for the day, or even if you're a resident, to be able to be in a place that is family friendly, that's outdoors, that's highlighting our business partner Susie Maitland's wonderful food. I can sing her and Bo's praises for the Paddle Inn being Boston Magazine's best casual North Shore restaurant. And I think that that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create a space that's affordable, that makes sense both aesthetically, visually, highlights what the island has to offer, looking back over the marsh, highlighting the sunsets there, and being part of that community, which we've done in multiple locations in our combined, I hate to say it, 50 years of restaurant experience. I think that this kind of concept, this kind of almost a natural extension of a fast casual concept, that it's, kind of tacos to oysters, Tecate beer to Chablis, a place that your kids would feel comfortable playing in a game area. And we would obviously kind of highlight those hours of operation. And we believe that the setback, the parking, et cetera, really conducive to that kind of operation and being friendly to the community. And I don't think that's just kind of a lip service. I think that obviously Vincent and Jeff and Bo specifically live there. I mean, this is a labor of love, and I think an interesting and creative pivot in this time frame. And quite honestly, I think the way that most people want to be eating and dining, particularly in a beautiful outdoor place, and highlighting really what Plum Island has to offer. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on too long, but you can tell I'm excited about the idea of it all.
Okay, thank you.
To piggyback on what Josh is saying, is this is, our intent is to be a very neighbor-friendly, family-friendly restaurant. This is not going to be a late night place. It's not going to be loud and boisterous. I mean, we really want to be an extension, as Josh said, of Plum Island, and an addition, a positive addition to the island, and nothing more than that. I would just personally, I have 2 daughters, and I just love to be able to bring my daughters to what we're proposing to do. And I know that, Jeff's got a new family, and Vincent has his kids there in the summertime. We're all very excited about it because it's the place that we want to bring our families.
Just got a text from Mark that he was bumped out for some reason. He's trying to reconnect to get back in.
I'd like to add real quick, and going on top of what we already got approved with the restaurant use, but as a business owner on Plum Island, I've seen so many people exponentially grown year after year coming to this island, and they need more things to do. And this is going to be one of those things that would really enhance people's experience on Plum Island. And other than just going to the beach, the restaurants that are here already are awesome and we love them, we support them, but there has to be something else. There's too many people coming to the island, there's not enough things to do is really my point.
I'm back. Sorry.
Looks like Mr. Chairman's frozen.
Okay, Mark, are you still with us?
Yeah, I got kicked out. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what I missed while I was in Zoom purgatory, but my next step was to sort of run through the the criteria for the permit, and if you don't mind, I'll just hit on that.
Yep.
Okay. So as you heard from us during our last application, the proposed restaurant use, even the larger one in 2019, was found to be not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what existed for a use, meaning the auto repair shop, the service station, the auto school. And so clearly we're scaling back the restaurant use significantly to make it much lower impact. So in that regard, it's even going to be less detrimental, if you will, than what was proposed in 2019. In addition, we're improving dimensionals substantially because we're not building a 4,700 square foot building. In fact, we're not building any buildings. There's just renovation going on inside the existing barn area. And most everything's mobile. So we're actually reducing lot area, reducing FAR, reducing the proposed height from where we were going to be with the larger building in 2019. And so, we believe that this kind of use and this kind of low impact use in that area, far from being substantially more detrimental, will actually be a benefit. It's been alluded several times that, this is sort of the gateway to the island. And that's the first thing you see when you come over the bridge. And right now you look at, the service station building, which is damaged, and these other buildings that, could be improved by having this proposed restaurant and, making a much more welcoming area for people coming on to Plum Island to enjoy. And so for all these reasons, we respectfully request that the board grant the requested findings. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, do you have any questions at this point?
I guess, I think I agree with a lot of what was said in terms of the entrance to Plum Island being extremely important. More opportunities for the number of people that either live or come from all over to enjoy Plum Island is certainly a good thing. I do question, though, the temporary nature of the plan and the proposed use in terms of porta potties. It seems that this plan is a placeholder. If the permit was approved in May of 19, then 2 years would be May of 2021 in terms of the continuing use, and something needs to happen, and that's the reasoning for having that section of the bylaw, so that properties don't lie foul and unused for the detriment of all. And so I just wonder where this is going. And in terms of the planned layout, if COVID was to reverse itself and next spring we would all be back to normal, would you be back trying to reverse and go back to the old plans? And so for that matter, what does this layout, as I'll call it a placeholder, do to what would happen again in the future? So for that, in terms of a site, I would say that in terms of the plan, that this would still need to go before the planning board for site plan review because of the impervious surface and the number of additional parking spaces. And so if you're counting seats on parking spaces, I think the distance of the first space and turnouts onto roads would need to be looked at. And I think at this point, in terms of trying to improve, I understand what you say. I like the concept, but this isn't really a restaurant. It's more of a food park in terms of its temporary nature. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just, what is the intended use? And with no buildings and a play area, it could be more detrimental to the neighborhood with the noise all being outside and not contained within a building. So I think there's some concerns to look at, and maybe they're not concerns, but those are some of the questions that I have. And I would say at this time, if you're coming back for the ZBA, then it would be what else in addition in terms of approving this site for commercial use for the entry. What are the intentions of that residence, and should the residence be just taken down from the property for the use that is now being proposed? And should the residents, if you're going to do this temporary park, then maybe one of the stipulations would be that residence gets fixed before anything else gets done and moved off the other neighbor's property and positioned. And to that end, it seems like keeping the residence is having your cake and eating it too, in terms of a use group that you're asking for in terms of the site. I have no problem with the restaurant. It would have been a fabulous building and a great addition and destination to the whole entire community of Newburyport, and Plum Island. But that was a building with the use contained within it, within food service contained within it. And this is a much different use, and that might require some discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
So
thank you.
those are my comments.
Yep. Mario, I know you weren't with us for the first proposal, but maybe you have some impressions of this proposal.
No, I think Eric covered a lot of what I was thinking about, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Very good. Sue, do we have any members of the public that are waiting to speak?
I just asked a question. The residence in question is 8R Old Point. Is that correct?
Yes. Right. It's not the corner lot, it's the second lot.
May I address some of your concerns, Mr. Saban?
Go right ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, we're full bore ahead to try to get the permit. And so this is, the intent is to run this establishment beginning this summer. And yes, we'll be going to site plan review, provided we are able to get our permits here. But that's the kind of, monetary investment that we're willing to make, because we want to open a restaurant for the upcoming season. And so once that happens, there's really no going back. Could they come back and, request changes? Sure, that could happen in the future, but that can happen with any use. But right now, the intent is to open a restaurant as presented. So I just wanted to, address that particular issue. And then with respect to the residents, I do recall that during the last hearings, we had discussions about that as well. And, we were planning on leaving the residence where it was, but we did allow a space for in case we moved it, something like that. but it's not, you know, a legal requirement to have to move the residence. It's, you know, over the line, but it's on another piece of property that's owned by the applicant. So it's not, you know, technically an encroachment that a neighbor is going to object to.
But both properties are encompassing the restaurant and the plan and the site plan and the parking for the use. So the house is on the property of the use.
Correct. It's a pre-existing.
So the property is, that residence is in play, Mark.
Well, the residence is a by right use.
Yeah, and you have a new application before us, and the discussion of what the new use is that you're proposing in terms of having a residence on a property with a change of use is now before us.
Fair enough.
Okay. I'll say.
All right, so do we have any public comment?
And Ellen Daly, I'm going to unmute her. Oh, no. Are you there, Ellen? No, I guess she's gone now.
Okay.
Is nobody else raising their hand at this time?
Okay, thank you, Sue. So Eric, is your question about the use of the space? I understand what you're thinking and asking, but if this plan was to be approved and they wanted to change what they were doing, they would have to come back to zoning.
I understand. Mark clearly answered the question. The question was, is this, you know, a temporary placeholder just to get, you know, not lapse the 2 years, and maybe it is wildly successful. And I hope it certainly is, because it is a fabulous place to watch the sunset. And it could be a great place to stop and meet people or gather. So I don't have any issue with the use. It was just sort of temporary measure and the change of use to another change of use to another change of use, and what would the island or neighbors endure if the site just kept evolving over a slow pace as opposed to, you know, a change of use having sort of a definitive plan to it. That's all I was asking. And okay. I think Mark answered the question. And you know, if this was more permanent, then there is water and sewer in the street. Why wouldn't a building be served to have, you know, more restrooms inside? Was the second part of that question. If it's, that's all. And if the part about the residents is that the intent of the Plum Island overlay in terms of not being more detrimental, and the leeway that has been given to the zoning board to interpret the Plum Island overlay district is the improvement of site and conditions of the existing island. And certainly having a small dilapidated resident that's half on or partly on somebody else's property, and the extent of debate that we had last time of carving out a space in which to move it, if the intent is to proceed with this, then move the resident and just make it compliant. And you have a resident that's backed up to a parking lot, so why wouldn't, and if through site plan review, the parking spaces get pushed back, you're either gonna lose seats or you're gonna push back into the house even more. So I'd like to just understand that the house is going to be improved. And the condition that is I know it's pre-existing, but it's greatly non-conforming. So why couldn't we just make it non-conforming as part of the application? Wouldn't that be great? That's where I'm going there.
Yeah, I understand your thought. I don't know if I'm just missing it, but on this schematic site plan, C101, does it even show the house?
Yeah. Yeah, it's there.
Okay, why aren't I seeing it?
Because the colored site plan that has blue and orange has Plum Island Boulevard to the right, and the two plans, C101 and the Joe the Architect layout sketch, have Plum Island Boulevard to the left.
Oh, okay. I got you.
So it is,
In the,
yeah.
in the lower right corner of C101.
Yep, I get it now. Sorry about that. Sometimes I'm not the best at looking at these.
I guess I would ask Mark or Vincent in terms of the restaurant. And, you know, if it's successful and you have the mobile kitchen as a food truck or two food trucks, would you be expanding that? And I guess that's the purview of a business permit from the select board. Is that?
I guess I can address that. I mean, as of now, I mean, with what happened to the building on the corner, you know, the fire that occurred there, while we had planned on leaving that structure there for now, we're not sure what's going to happen to that corner and whether or not something in the future on a much scaled down version gets put there or not. Is just too soon to tell. But what we're looking to do is move forward with the restaurant concept as proposed. I mean, we were even on a call 3 days ago talking about the initial menus and whatnot. So it's we're really looking forward to trying getting this open for next year, and anything else that might come in that corner where that the fire damaged building came from, we would obviously bring to the board as soon as we had any idea if we wanted to try and put something there.
Okay, so you're just going to leave that building as is for the time being?
We're still trying to determine with the building inspector if it's going to need to come down. It's looking like it'll likely need to come down due to the damage that was incurred to it subsequent to when we did our initial application for this meeting. So we're kind of going with that assumption that it's going to get torn down along with the house adjacent to it. And then, you know, we can always come back if something's going to get put there and you know, ask the board for that approval.
So it would seem, in terms of improving the corner and the gateway to Plum Island, it would be great if the building was taken down. And I could understand if Mr. Griffin could make a case or an argument for an existing building to remain, but I don't think there's any detriment to taking it down.
There would just be the, you know, the time period starts to tick as to when you can then rebuild by right afterwards.
Yeah, but if you have a site and a use and you come back for us for a new use, as long as the use meets the dimensional requirements, it's not about the dimensional requirements.
So I was talking about the structure itself. So, you know, we would have that rebuild by right.
It's where I'm going with.
Yeah.
Repurposing the building as opposed to something that was brand new and repositioned on the site, and the rights of either or are different.
The condition of the building, I from my understanding from the building inspector, is in bad enough shape that it's going to require it to get torn down. We're just waiting on that official determination for you know.
Vincent, I totally understand that it's a matter of setbacks and position of the building and whether you're rehabbing an existing building as opposed to tearing it down and then losing a building and its footprint and what may happen in the future. And your previous restaurant was positioned within the zoning dimensional criteria. So I was just asking about if there was some thought that you're keeping it because you have other plans. Again, that's where I was going with it.
Not for that building at this, in its condition.
And to the extent there was any kind of, like we talked about, any kind of change of use or something that would modify what we've presented, we would need to be coming back.
Okay, so in general, I think it's a scaled down version, and I really don't have any opposition to what you're presenting, as long as all the dimensional things fit. But I guess, do we want to talk more about the house that Eric is, what can be done about that? Do you have any more to add to that, Eric? Or you feel like you presented your case?
I think my case was pretty clear about improvement of the site means improvement of the site at all parts and pieces of the site, and leaving something that's not in compliant, even though it is pre-existing and there, would seem to be an oversight in terms of a betterment of the property for the use, for the non-conforming use of the site that is continuously then allowed, I would add. You know, we all like the idea and we all would love to go to a restaurant, but there are some issues and there are zoning requirements of what is allowed and not allowed on Plum Island, and this is a very unique condition. So it would seem, in order to stay and put the best foot forward for unique condition, that it continuously improves on the site of what it's being proposed. I don't think that's too much to ask in terms of being favorable for the project.
Okay. I'm not questioning you in the sense of what you're saying, but I'm not working for the applicant at all, but we did approve the last application with this house there with a space set out to correct it.
Right. So here we are again with a new application and another chance before us to improve what's there, and with no action taken in the previous year plus, then it's a question to be asked again. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. I just
would like not to approve a site plan and have something hang in limbo with every intent to improve it, but it never happens. So, and I do understand, you know, in the condition of the building that it would have to go to get a building permit to improve it, and at that time it would be moved, but why wouldn't it, or couldn't it just be done now as the betterment of the site? And I have one more question, but would you pave the parking area, or would you do like a hard gravel parking lot?
We're anticipating kind of a hard gravel that kind of already exists on that site right now. And then just to keep in mind that right now, most of the front of the property is all asphalt, and a substantial part of the property is asphalt, and the vast majority of that will get taken out and turned into some sort of a permeable surface.
Yep. That's a great betterment for the site.
I would agree. Just one thing I could just kind of mentioning 8R, I guess it's kind of personal for Jeff and I, as my mother-in-law and his mother actually currently lives in that house right now. You know, I would state that it's actually a very nice house that actually has value to it. And I know the rules allow for improvements, and if too much improvement has to happen, then it has to be torn down and rebuilt. And that's obviously something that we're going to leave enough room to allow for if it ever needs to happen. But what I would say is that I think there's the value of the existing structure is enough to allow for a lot of improvement to be done to it and still stay within the rules of the Plum Island, code.
Well, I think that's open for interpretation in terms of improvement of the entire use of the site. And I understand that you wouldn't want to do it now, but it's, again, I'm just, the intent to try to make the best improvement for Plum Island, improve the conditions that are clearly not in compliant with the overarching bylaws would seem to be a great step forward. Yeah, and I certainly understand if you came before us and we tried to make the best use of it, but the change of use and the outdoor use and having a residence there, it would seem the value of the residence could be improved, and possibly the value of the site would be improved without the residence there. So just, we're trying not to keep conditions that are non-compliant and improve. And that's the point of discussion that I'm putting out there.
I'm not sure where to go with this tonight, right now.
Can I jump in just for a moment?
Yep, go right ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally appreciate what Mr. Svan is saying, and I hear some of what he said now in what he said previously. And it's, an admirable sentiment. But I would just ask, the board to take a look at what exists, which was, the auto repair use, the service station, the auto school use, and the residence. And so we're getting rid of those other detrimental uses and giving you a scaled back, better use with the residents. Whereas before you had more detrimental uses plus a residence. This is an overall improvement, even though the residence isn't likely to change. I think you gathered that from what Mr. Godin had said.
Okay, so let's not talk about the residents for a few minutes. And, we've looked at the property or the proposal in general, but have we really discussed setbacks and things that are more important than just saying it'd be a nice open space? And I don't think we have.
If we were to approve a motion, Howie, it would be as before, that it's conditional on planning board approval because it would have to go through the site plan process.
Okay.
So, yeah, normally we would be able to determine and speak to and rule on the site plan with dimensions, but there's so much going on here. Who knows what the planning board may want in terms of, something as far as a traffic study to understand entrances and distances from intersections, et cetera, that's not our purview. So, there's the issue of use is before us, and a condition of obviously Conservation Commission and Planning Board approval.
Okay. Well, thanks for the help. Mario, do you understand the the point about the residents?
Yes, I think I do.
Okay, okay, so previously, and again, I'm just trying to get you up to speed, is that same condition was there when we approved it before, and there was a space set aside to move a residence to, so they would still be able to have a residence on the property.
It had a possibility of becoming compliant in the future,
To
or
make it
somewhat compliant.
possibly making it compliant. I'm not even sure, is that space still laid out in this plan?
No,
It's not, I don't believe.
It's not showing on there, but we plan to have enough space to move it over if needed.
So I would say one thing, not saying we're approving it with or without it, but there should be a place set aside like there was on the former plan, I would think, but that may be a new point. We haven't decided, you know, whether we're going forward or not with the house the way it is. But, you know, there needs to be an indication possibly that it would go someplace.
Space to move that house to is not affected by the new plan. It's the same as the approved plan.
Yeah, but it doesn't show on the plan, does it?
the space is not delineated, no.
Okay, so,
But we could potentially add that in if that would satisfy the board.
I'm not sure whether it will or not, but it seems that you would have been on the plan, knowing what the previous plan was.
I guess what we didn't ask that was previously asked before in terms of the garage building becoming this proposed bar, is there any unit within that proposed garage unit? Is there a second floor in that building?
There's an existing loft space, yes.
There was an existing bathroom and shower in there, but no actual residence. It was purely a bathroom and shower utilized by the employees of the service station.
But you're putting a new bathroom facility in that building now in your proposal, correct?
Correct. So right now there's one of the existing bathrooms would stay, and then we would add an adjacent bathroom to it. And obviously remove the shower.
Right. So it feels we're kind of at a standstill as far as the question about the house. I can see both sides of this. You make the property a little bit better, but not as good as it could be. Or you could
No, I don't think we're at a standstill. I think we could make a motion. I think we can make a favorable motion.
A favorable motion to approve with the condition that something's set aside for that house.
I would be willing to possibly make a motion that would approve the site plan upon a new final, civil engineering site plan drafted with all the requirements and dimensions on it after planning board review and approval, COMCOM review and approval. The condition that garage space, loft, has the stipulation that it should not ever be a residence, inhabited as a residence, that any restroom is solely for the use of the restaurant or food service in that. And that we would be, I think it would be, it's not part of any motion, but it would certainly be helpful if that existing building on the front did come down and change, really change the appearance and gateway to Plum Island.
Right. And what about the residents, Eric?
The residents, the house would be delineated to have a space and proper setback, and planning board would review appropriate parking layout, and the house would need to be accommodated on the site in the future should anything happen to it.
Right, okay, that's all I was getting at. So if you want to reread that motion?
If we're all ready, I think I'll try.
I know you, Sue and Brian will do some work on this, but I think you should state it again without me interrupting you. If you could, please.
So I'll propose a motion to grant a finding for relief from section 97-4D, part 4 of the Newbury zoning bylaws for a change of use from the current auto sales repair use to a restaurant use for the property, for properties located at 24 Old Point Road and for 88R Old Point Road, with the following conditions: that the property receives approval after going through the planning board review process. The proposed property goes through, receives Conservation Commission approval, obviously. The condition that the loft space in the garage or that building or any other building that is does not have any occupants besides the sole residence that is partly off the property in the corner. And those are the three conditions. And that the house, in terms of the planning board review, gets properly located so that it can be within the setbacks and be favorably not sitting on top of the parking in the future for a house of that size.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Eric,
Yes.
Mario,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so the motion passes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. May I ask one favor, please? When the decision is drafted, could I have a draft to review?
I'm sure Sue could provide you with that.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you next summer.
Okay.
Very much.
So I guess, Brian, you and I will need to talk over the next few days.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Got some work to do.
we do.
Yeah,
Next
make it like
week,
10 pages long. No, sorry.
Well, we already wrote that one
I know.
twice. Next meeting on the 17th, so we should plan to be ready for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we will endeavor to do so.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much, Brian. Have a good
Yeah,
night.
that was very helpful to have you here, and especially on the Seacoast Canine to explain it the way you did, sort of middle of the road and explaining all options and thoughts without weighing one side or the other was very good. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just for the record, I'm apologetic for not being in a position where I could be more sort of instructive. But as I'm sure you were noticing and sensitive to, I can't put my thumb on the scale and tell you what the right outcome is.
Right.
So
No, we understand.
Yeah, but I think you were exactly that the length of your discussion and the way you went about it was more than appropriate to present both sides or to give an understanding to allow us to have our decision and our own thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you for that comment, and I appreciate that. That doesn't always get recognized in these contexts where, some boards would perceive me as representing the building commissioner and defending the building commissioner's position like an advocate. My capacity tonight here is to represent your interests and help you through the process, not to defend Peter, for better or for worse. So that's what I endeavored to do. So thank you.
That at the last meeting, I kind of put you on the spot by asking you, and I understand that, I did that purposely, even though I knew you couldn't say which one was right or wrong, but I just wanted everybody to hear.
I knew exactly what you were doing. And I thought it was handled very, very well because it was the elephant in the room.
Right.
And you just got right to it. So that was perfect.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we made it through tonight anyhow. So there's always next month.
Yeah. All righty. Enjoy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
We
you
need
too.
to make a motion to close the meeting.
Okay, so we need a motion, Eric.
Motion to close the meeting?
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, or Eric?
Yes.
Or no? Okay,
Yes.
Mario?
Yes.
And I vote yes too. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See you
sir.
guys.
Thank you. No
Thanks,
problem.
Sue.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving to all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.